In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the final lights that we have in Unreal Engine 4. Alright, so in the last lesson we had talked about the directional light, we talked about the point light, and we've talked a little bit about how lighting and baking lights can work inside of Unreal Engine 4. Let's take a look at the last two lights. We have our spotlight. If we drag and drop that into the scene, you'll see that it's a light that emits from a single point, and it emits out in a cone shape. This can be used for things like lamps that are along the ceiling, or they could be lamps that are on the floor. You just need to simply rotate them upward instead. Okay. Now remember, they are from a single point and they emit outward in a cone shape. So you'll want to make sure that you're using them in that fashion. Now they can also be used to cast light from holes, maybe in a ceiling or something like that. You can also adjust their parameters going to the Details panel. So in the Details, you can see that we have the same transform properties that we had with the point light. You have your mobility as well, and you can set those. You also have your intensity, your light color, but now we have this inner cone angle and outer cone angle, and this adjusts the shape of the light itself. So the inner cone, we don't see anything because it's set to 0, but the light blue is the outer cone, and so you can make some adjustments to that. Now, if you want to adjust the inner cone, you increase that, you'll notice that this dark blue cone shows up. And basically what's happening here is that within the dark blue cone, light is set to 100%. Now, we were getting the full-on intensity from that, and then once it leaves outside of that dark blue cone, it begins to decay from that cone to the outside light blue cone. Okay, until it ultimately reaches 0, which is outside of that. You also have your attenuation. You can make your adjustments to that, so that basically controls how far that light will affect. Okay, and we have source radius and source length, and again, we're not going to be discussing that. Now, just like the point light and the directional light, this can be baked in as well. You'll just simply need to do build and then build lighting only. Now in this case I don't necessarily want that, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete out this light. Now the final light that we have in here is our skylight, and this can be dragged and dropped into the scene, and immediately you'll notice something happening. You'll notice that everything becomes very blue, and the reason for that is what it's doing is it's taking light information from the environment, and mostly blue in the sky here, and it's putting that on the other objects in our scene. And this gives us a more true lighting experience here. So there's bounced light in the true world. So if you go outside and it's a clear day, just kind of take a look around at your objects and notice that there's a hint of that blue that are on your objects. Now, especially on objects that have kind of this high specularity or this gloss on them. That's going to be applied as well. Now remember, whenever you apply new lights, I don't really care much for the way this looks, to be honest. However, you'll want to remember that you need to build your lights to get a true idea of what that's going to look like when it's finished. So because we've added this in, everything looks real shiny, and I don't really like the way that looks, but we need to remember to go ahead and build that lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and let's take a look at our scene. Alright, so the lighting has finished here, and you can see that it's kind of toned down a little bit. Now we still have this shininess on our rock, and that's because the material has this wet drip on it. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. Looking at the inside, not too bad there. We might want to tone down that wet drip on that material. Now you're starting to see that lighting affects your materials, and so they are intertwined with one another. And so once you start in and you start doing your lighting pass, maybe a material isn't working all that well with the lights that you're creating. So you may have to make some final tweaks to your materials, make some final tweaks to your lights, and things like that. Okay? So all in all, I'm okay with the way that looks. We can tone down that material if we like. This is an instance material, so if we go into the environment and we go into materials, for the rock, we have things like this cave rock, we have this instance, and in this we can take a look at our parameters, and we have this wet drips, and we can kind of tone down the wet drips on that. So here's the drips blend and the scale of those. We could actually turn those off if we really wanted to. Okay. So just click on that to turn it off. Okay, and we could save that. And let's go ahead and turn these off as well. Okay. And so that's going to update that. Okay. You may have to do another bake on that, but it should give you that final look there. Okay. You still got a little bit of specularity on some of these rocks, but that's okay. All right, so there we go. Now we talked about all of the different lights that we have available to us. Now what I want to get into beyond the lights is I want to get into some of the different effects. And so we're trying to create an atmosphere. We're trying to create a mood. And so I'm going to take a quick lesson. I'm going to talk about how to bring sound into the game and how we can make adjustments to that to create a very specific atmosphere for our levels.